Imamura Hitoya walks down a dark city alley contemplating the harsh inequalities of modern society. He reflects on how society favors the high-ranked while looking down on those at the bottom. He continues walking, realizing that trying to rise in rank only makes life impossibly difficult. Accepting a low status might be easier, but deep down, he remains deeply unsatisfied. Hitoya stares down in despair, unable to see a path to future happiness in this life. Distracted by his dark thoughts, he is startled by blinding headlights rushing toward him on the crosswalk. In a watery green abyss, a skeletal hand reaches out into the light. Hitoya is utterly bewildered as he stares at his own bizarre fleshless hand. He panics upon realizing his human hand is completely transformed into bare skeletal bone. A horrifying realization quickly spreads as he discovers the transformation extends to his entire body. He screams in absolute terror upon seeing his body has become a level 5 skeleton. Looking at a floating system screen, he wonders in disbelief if he has entered a game. He questions how he survived the truck accident and struggles to identify his unfamiliar surroundings. Floating green system notification reveals his new location is the F-rank Forest Mausoleum dungeon. A sudden, cute squeak from behind catches his attention. The skeleton spins around in pure shock at the unexpected sound behind him. An adorable level 1 white wolf pup appears before him with a cheerful bark. He sits on the grass, bewildered to find a tiny, adorable wolf pup staring back at him. Nervously sweating, he asks the curious little pup if it intends to eat him. Instead of attacking, the playful puppy happily rolls over on the grass, completely disarming him. Hitoya gently pets the friendly pup as it contentedly curls up and falls asleep. He lets out a sigh of relief, concluding that his new companion is entirely harmless. A sudden rustling of leaves and wind alerts him to an approaching presence. High up in the quiet forest, leaves drift down around the skeleton and his sleeping companion. Staring up at the sky, he begins to think this afterlife might not be so bad. Suddenly, the wolf pup's ears perk up as a sharp sound cuts through the silence. Flashing red system warning alerts him that a dungeon challenger has been detected. He looks up in confusion while the small wolf begins to tremble in absolute terror. An unseen hunter readies a loaded crossbow, eager to claim an easy target. Hearing the weapon, Hitoya turns his head in alarm, wondering who is approaching. Without warning, a deadly arrow flies through the air and pierces straight through Hitoya's skull. He collapses to the ground as the terrified pup cries out in distress. The second arrow mercilessly strikes the defenseless wolf pup, sending it flying through the air. A heavy leather boot steps forward, signaling the arrival of the ruthless attacker. A muscular red-haired hunter carrying a crossbow gloats over his easy harvest of materials. From within the fallen skull, Hitoya's eye suddenly flares with a vengeful blue light. A dark silhouette of his former self smirks, refusing to die quietly once again. A blue energy surges around his remains as a system notification triggers a secret boss mission. A sepia flashback reminds him of his past misery and his ultimate refusal to accept defeat. Refusing to remain weak, Hitoya channels the rising blue flames to initiate a change. A blinding explosion of blue light erupts, shocking the two hunters standing nearby. A status window announces a monster evolution as a new human form with dark blue hair emerges. The hunters watch in disbelief as the skeleton suddenly evolves into a human-like form. The two hunters arrogantly plan to shoot him down and butcher his wolf companion. With glowing scion eyes, Hitoya coldly declares he won't let them touch his companion. In a flash, Hitoya completely vanishes from their sight, leaving the archer hunter in shock. Hitoya suddenly leaps down from above, taking the two startled hunters completely by surprise. He viciously slams the archer to the ground, leaving the blonde hunter gasping in terror. The blonde swordsman hunter panics, utterly terrified by the protagonist's overwhelming power. Standing silently behind him, Hitoya prepares to unleash his wrath on the remaining hunter. The blonde bandit panics, sweating in disbelief that his steel sword was cut by Hitoya's tail. The red-haired archer curses in frustration as the blonde bandit watches in startled panic. The furious red-haired archer aims his bow, shouting death threats while his blonde partner runs away. The archer fires a barrage of deadly arrows, but his anger turns to instant confusion. The archer trembles in terror as his arrows shatter completely against the high-level dungeon boss. With a cold glare, Hitoya warns the terrified intruders to never return to his domain. Realizing they are completely outmatched, the terrified archer screams for them to escape the dungeon. The devious blonde bandit sweatily orders the dungeon gate to close behind him. The archer gasps in absolute horror as he realizes his partner is leaving him to die. The trapped archer desperately begs his partner to wait, reaching out to the closing light. The selfish blonde bandit mockingly refuses to wait, running away to save his own skin. A painful scream echoes through the forest as the stone gate mercilessly crushes the archer. The massive stone gate stands completely sealed, locking the dungeon in a silent, grim peace. Hitoya stands stunned in silence, slowly coming to terms with his first hard-fought victory. Deeply saddened, Hitoya turns his attention back to his tiny, defenseless companion. Hitoya kneels beside the motionless, bloodied body of the innocent white wolf pup. Hitoya anxiously wonders if his strange new abilities can bring his companion back to life. A warm, sparkling light suddenly begins to envelop the wounded wolf pup. Hitoya gasps in sheer disbelief as he witnesses the unexpected magical phenomenon. Brilliant columns of light erupt from the earth, filling Hitoya with overwhelming wonder. A sudden cheerful bark echoes whirly through the bright glowing clearing. The tiny white wolf pup appears completely healed, smiling and wagging its tail happily. Hitoya's face lights up with pure joy as his playful companion rolls on the grass. Overwhelmed with relief, Hitoya smiles warmly as his massive bony tail wags with joy. Hitoya suddenly panics, realizing his body is still a bizarre semi-skeletal hybrid with a massive tail. In a comical panic, Hitoya accidentally lifts the pup with his wild, uncontrollable tail. A floating status screen materializes, displaying his impressive new title as a dungeon boss. The shocking truth washes over Hitoya as he accepts his destiny as the dungeon boss. The scene shifts to a frantic voice desperately pleading for others to believe his wild story. At their hideout, Bodo frantically reports the terrifying evolution of the dungeon boss to his leader. Bodo insists that they will need a powerful dragon to defeat the formidable boss. Gildan mockingly laughs at Bodo's failure, finding his defeat in an F-rank dungeon highly embarrassing. Their terrifying shadowed boss looms behind them, coldly mocking Bodo's pathetic failure. The boss deems Bodo completely useless as a monstrous mouth opens wide to consume him. The massive jaws snap shut, instantly erasing any trace of the cowardly bandit. The intimidating dragon boss questions Gildan about his frequent visits to that specific dungeon. The boss orders Gildan to exterminate every wolf using their captive twin-headed baby dragon. The ruthless leader confidently dismisses the newly evolved dungeon boss as mere garbage. The boss commands the vicious, bloodthirsty monster to unleash absolute chaos upon the dungeon. With a final command, the leader orders his strike force to begin the hunt. Gildan mockingly tells the caged beasts to prove their worth on this mission. Gildan stops in his tracks, annoyed by a defiant glare from his captive creature. Gildan reflects on their brutal world where useless beasts are slaughtered and harvested for parts. Weakness in this cruel world leads directly to a cold, profitable end for monsters. Gildan demands absolute obedience and usefulness from his beasts if they wish to survive. Meanwhile, Hitoya explores his tranquil domain with his fully recovered companion resting on his shoulder. Hitoya admires the breathtaking scale of his dungeon, comparing it to an ancient forest stadium. Intrigued, he decides to venture further into the dense, mysterious woodlands of his new home. He observes that his dungeon currently feels like nothing more than peaceful, undisturbed nature. Despite the serenity, Hitoya remains highly vigilant, anticipating other dangerous beasts hiding in the shadows. Baffled by a sudden cute bark, Hitoya stares in confusion at another tiny white wolf pup. Hitoya panics as a strange rustling sound echoes from the dark foliage ahead. He is stunned to spot a second adorable wolf pup emerging from the trees. More rustling sounds echo from the bushes, catching Hitoya completely off guard. Hitoya gasps in sheer disbelief as dozens of level 1 wolf pups swarm around him. The pack begins a cheerful welcome dance, instantly warming Hitoya's heart with their playfulness. Hitoya suddenly notices something unusual glowing in the distance behind the trees. Intrigued by a soft green light, Hitoya wonders if something is hidden nearby. Stepping through the trees, Hitoya marvels at a massive cluster of brilliant glowing mushrooms. Surprised by the mystical atmosphere, Hitoya examines the glowing flora within his domain. The floating status screen reveals that even the glowing mushrooms possess a level. Surrounded by his wolf companions, Hitoya questions if these plants are truly ordinary mushrooms. The system screens confirm that both the mushrooms and the pups share the same level. Hitoya realizes that this small pack of wolves are the only inhabitants of his dungeon. He concludes that only weak, harmless monsters reside within his low-ranking forest sanctuary. Hitoya stares up at the massive stone gate, noting its low-level entry requirements. A grim memory reminds Hitoya of his fragile past as a weak, easily defeated skeleton. Hitoya stands tall, determined to carve out a better destiny in this new world. Hitoya is startled when a playful pup suddenly climbs onto his massive bony tail. The affectionate little pup cuddles close, melting any remaining tension in Hitoya's heart. Feeling the gentle warmth of his companions, Hitoya smiles, finding comfort among the wolves. Looking down at his peaceful companions, Hitoya vows to protect them at all costs. The peaceful clearing becomes a safe haven for the small, happy pack of wolves. Hitoya realizes that staying too close to the main gate invites dangerous intruders. Hitoya gently tells the pack that they must retreat deeper into the protective forest. Hitoya warns his companions of danger just as a sudden system alert flashes red. An urgent system warning flashes announcing that dungeon challengers have breached the domain. The massive stone gate begins to open, signaling the arrival of hostile intruders. A menacing figure steps through the threshold, casting a long shadow across the clearing. A sinister voice commands a terrifying twin-headed dragon to soar into the dungeon skies. Hitoya looks up in sheer alarm as the massive beast shadows the forest canopy. Hitoya gasps in horror upon confronting a formidable level 51 twin-headed dragon. The ruthless red-haired hunter Gul'dan gloats about hunting down the newly discovered dungeon boss. Gul'dan commands his loyal twin-headed beast to execute the dungeon boss without mercy. Hitoya desperately commands the terrified wolves to flee back into the safety of the woods. Hitoya barely blocks the dragon's lethal claws, struggling to withstand its immense level 51 power. A painful memory of his companion's past injury flashes before Hitoya's eyes. Haunted by the past, Hitoya refuses to let history repeat itself in his sanctuary. Knowing he is their sole protector, Hitoya steel shores his resolve to defend his pack. The wolves cry out in distress, pulling Hitoya's focus back to the immediate danger. The brave little white pup steps forward, growling defiantly at the descending threat. Leading the pack, the small pup charges ahead, displaying surprising courage despite the danger. Tears well up in the young pup's eyes as it faces the overwhelming enemy. Hitoya remembers the warmth of shielding the fragile pup when he was just a skeleton. Fueled by a desire to help, the tiny pup leaps fiercely into the fray. Touched by their incredible bravery, Hitoya silently thanks his loyal, courageous companions. Gul'dan laughs sadistically, mocking their desperate struggle as nothing more than a fun hunt. Gul'dan ruthlessly demands that his beast prove its utility or face immediate execution. The twin-headed dragon opens its jaws, charging a devastating blast of blue energy. A system notification confirms that the dragon has successfully activated its lethal skull. Hitoya stares in shock, realizing his opponent has just unleashed a powerful active skill. The twin-headed dragon activates its skill, unleashing a massive torrent of freezing blue energy. The freezing blast erupts with immense power, forcing Hitoya to leap away in extreme panic. Dodging with rapid agility, Hitoya desperately sprints away as the icy destruction closes in. Hitoya suddenly gasps in shock, realizing the terrifying speed and reach of the incoming attack. The devastating blast completely freezes the forest ground solid, leaving behind a field of jagged ice. Glancing back at the frozen landscape, Hitoya notes that this is no ordinary flame. As the twin-headed dragon circles overhead, Hitoya continues his desperate retreat across the clearing. The other head of the dragon roars fiercely as its own lethal skill activates. A scorching blast of fire rains down, sending Hitoya soaring through the air to escape. Looking at the blazing destruction, Hitoya is horrified to see the intense heat melt the earth. The twin-headed dragon swoops down, wielding both instant freezing ice and earth-melting heat. Hitoya observes his foes, trying to comprehend the nature of these powerful game-like skills. Hitoya compares these formidable skills to the special moves commonly found in video games. He realizes that these skills are essentially the ultimate special abilities of this world. The beast's dual natures are revealed, one head wielding ice while the other controls fire. Hitoya turns his thoughts toward Gul'dan, wondering if the ruthless hunter also possesses a skill. He realizes that if Gul'dan has skills, he might also have unlocked some himself. Suddenly, a glowing system notification appears indicating that a new skill is now available. Excitement and hope surge within Hitoya as the system confirms his skill activation is possible. A system screen reveals his unique rebirth skill, which lets him acquire failed challengers' abilities. Suddenly, Hitoya senses an incoming attack and quickly dashes to the side in alarm. Gul'dan fires a barrage of deadly projectiles from his crossbow, attempting to pin down Hitoya. Hitoya realizes with dread that Gul'dan has just activated a highly accurate sniper skill. But the sniper's homing shot takes a shocking turn, accidentally striking his own dragon. Gul'dan heartlessly commands his wounded beast to get up, threatening to turn it into a decoration. Hitoya is deeply appalled, questioning why Gul'dan would treat his own loyal allies so cruelly. Gul'dan scoffs coldly, declaring that monsters are nothing more than useless tools, not allies. The ruthless hunter mockingly insists that monsters are completely disposable and easily replaced. Gul'dan laughs sadistically, explaining that broken or useless tools are simply meant to be discarded. Hitoya stands in silent fury, his glowing skeletal spine pulsing with a cold, righteous anger. Gul'dan remembers his cruel practice of breaking, harvesting, and discarding monsters for his own profit. Hitoya fondly remembers the innocent warmth and affection of his small, loyal wolf companion. The wounded, terrified dragon trembles in fear, deeply hurt by its master's heartless betrayal. The beast's head swaps shocked glances as the glowing red chain around its neck shatters. Gul'dan gasps in sudden confusion as he notices his control over the beast breaking. Seizing the moment, Hitoya charges forward with incredible speed, enveloped in brilliant blue light. With fierce determination, Hitoya declares that he refuses to view monsters as mere tools. With a powerful glowing punch, Hitoya shatters Gul'dan's crossbow into countless pieces. Gul'dan stands in absolute wide-eyed shock as his prized weapon is destroyed in an instant. Hitoya stands tall, coldly asking the helpless hunter what his next move will be. In a desperate panic, Gul'dan screams at his dragons to move and protect him. The terrified bandit furiously insults his beasts, screaming at them to obey his commands. The twin-headed dragon swoops down from above, glaring down at its former master with vengeance. The beast charges a lethal blast of elemental energy, preparing to turn on its tormentor. The dragon unleashes a devastating frozen breath directly at the screaming, defenseless hunter. Gildan screams in absolute horror as the freezing energy rapidly encases him in solid ice. The proud dragon glares down fiercely, finally free from the chains of its cruel master. The frozen statue of the ruthless bandit shatters completely, ending his reign of terror. A final system screen announces that the level 35 challenger has failed the dungeon. Hitoya looks surprised as a glowing blue notification indicates that skill activation is now possible. He realizes his unique rebirth skill has met its activation conditions following the challenger's defeat. With determination, the dark-haired boy commands his newly unlocked skill to activate immediately. Surrounded by crackling blue electricity, a notification confirms he has successfully acquired the challenger's Ghost Strike skill. A flashback reveals Gildan gloating about his own ability to steal skills from challengers. The two black, bird-like dragon beasts stare in sudden surprise and confusion. Emitting a low growl, the two dark-feathered creatures prepare to defend themselves defensively. Hitoya quickly raises his hand, urging the cautious, wounded beasts to wait and calm down. Hitoya stands defensively with hands raised, quickly apologizing to the bird-like beasts for scaring them. Keeping his hands raised, Hitoya gently reassures them that he has no intention of fighting. He admits he must seem like a bizarre dungeon monster to them, leaving the two beasts completely puzzled. Suddenly, a brilliant yellow status window appears, displaying a dungeon boss exclusive skill named Forest Mausoleum. Hitoya stares in confusion at the unfamiliar window, questioning the nature of this boss exclusive ability. The golden screen details that his F-rank dungeon boss skill allows him to add monsters to his domain. Hitoya is completely taken aback to discover he has unlocked a second powerful skill. The dark-haired boy wonders if this skill truly lets him add new monsters directly to the dungeon. A prompt asks if he wants to add the level 51 twin dragons as dungeon monsters. Hitoya gasps in realization, wondering if he can actually convert the dragon beasts into dungeon guardians. Glowing golden system screen confirms his second unique skill is called Spirit Guard's Blessing. Staring at the feathered beasts, Hitoya contemplates turning these dragons into monsters that belong to his dungeon. He envisions how powerful it would be to have fire-breathing dragons guarding his sanctuary. Hitoya reflects on how challengers will continue targeting his dungeon, making stronger defense necessary. He informs the birds that their cruel master is gone and they're free to leave. Hitoya looks down at his glowing blue hands, contemplating the freedom he is offering him. He looks at the two black bird-like beasts and gently asks what they wish to do next. A painful memory flashes of Gildan coldly locking them in a cage and calling them disposable tools. The two feathered dragon beasts exchange silent, searching glances as they contemplate their past trauma. They realize Hitoya is a strange guy who could have easily forced them under his command. Sensing Hitoya's genuine kindness, the two bird-like beasts nod to each other with newfound trust. The beasts look back up at Hitoya, making the decision clear to their potential new protector. Hitoya is surprised, asking if they truly want to stay and join his dungeon sanctuary. With a unified nod, the two feathered dragons signal their desire to remain by his side. Overjoyed by their decision, Hitoya beams with a warm smile and sincerely thanks them. He commands his system, activating the Add Dungeon Monster skill to officially welcome his new companions. Golden alerts announce that the level 51 twin dragons have been successfully added to the dungeon. Enveloped in a sparkling magical glow, the two bird-like dragons are surrounded by warm, rejuvenating energy. A burst of healing sparkles envelops the feathered beasts, restoring their energy and mending their wounds. A sudden, quick rustling sound from the nearby bushes startles Hitoya, drawing his attention away. A tiny, soft white paw steps out onto the grass, accompanied by light footsteps. The brave white wolf pup leaps out with a happy cry, leading the returned pack. Hitoya's face lights up as he happily welcomes the returning wolves, asking if everyone is all right. The white pup cries out joyfully, leading the rest of the cute pack back to him. The adorable wolf pups swarm Hitoya, eagerly nuzzling against him with affection and relief. The white pup looks up with deep gratitude, realizing Hitoya's presence successfully protected the entire pack. Hitoya reaches out and gently strokes the white pup's head, expressing his deep affection. Smiling warmly at his loyal companions, Hitoya softly thanks the brave little white pup. The white pup yips happily, nuzzling into Hitoya's hand in a moment of pure bliss. Surrounded by his growing family of wolves and dragons, Hitoya feels a deep sense of peace. He briefly recalls his painful past as a weak, helpless skeleton unable to protect anyone. Hugging his knees contentedly, Hitoya smiles with quiet relief, glad to finally have a home to protect. Reflecting on his journey, Hitoya feels a sense of accomplishment, as if he has finally taken a step forward. The white wolf pup yips playfully on Hitoya's head as a voice observes his human appearance. A voice bluntly asks Hitoya if he is truly a non-human entity. The two dark feathered dragons look at him in silence, leaving Hitoya and his wolf companions waiting. Hitoya reacts in pure disbelief, shouting in surprise upon learning that the dragons can actually talk. From a high tree branch, Hitoya looks out over the peaceful forest sanctuary as the two dragons fly. Hitoya recalls the warning given by the twin dragons about the types of people who target this dungeon. The dragon explains that the Dragon Raiders are a brutal crew that captures and sells dungeon monsters. Hitoya grows concerned, realizing that the ruthless Dragon Raiders are bound to return to his dungeon. The dragons warn him about their terrifyingly strong leader, Chief Fucho, who will eventually raid the dungeon. An ominous violet energy swirls behind chains as Hitoya contemplates the many questions he still has. Hitoya decides not to press further, sensing these painful memories are things the dragons wish to forget. The two feathered dragons lower their heads in quiet sorrow, comforting each other in silence. Kneeling gently, Hitoya warmly promises the dragons that he will protect them regardless of the danger. Hitoya raises his finger with a smile, offering a helpful suggestion on their next course of action. Hitoya advises the group to hide deep inside the dungeon while he keeps watch as a lookout. A simplified map details that the dungeon has only one entrance, making lookout duty from a tree highly effective. Hitoya gently pats the worried little wolf pup, reassuring it that everything will be completely fine. A system notification explains his rebirth skill, which lets him copy the abilities of failed dungeon challengers. Hitoya looks ahead with resolve, realizing that defeating more enemies will allow him to grow much stronger. He resolves to gather skills and defeat the dragon raiders to secure lasting peace for his sanctuary. Sitting high in the trees, Hitoya vows to use his current strength to protect this peace step by step. Suddenly, a sharp, alarming rustling sound echoes through the quiet forest, shattering the peace. Hitoya and his companions instantly tense up, turning their attention toward the sudden disturbance. A red warning system notification flashes, alerting Hitoya that the dreaded dungeon challengers have finally arrived. With menacing footsteps, a group of armed raiders bearing red dragon tattoos marches into the dungeon. A muscular raider laughs, complaining about Gildan stealing their beasts and predicting their boss will execute him. Peering down from his perch, Hitoya gasps as he realizes a massive army of dragon raiders has arrived. Hitoya begins to sweat, realizing he has never faced such an overwhelming number of opponents at once. The heartless raiders laugh, betting on who will achieve the highest kill count in their cruel hunting game. Overcome with disgust at their cruel games, Hitoya glares down at the invaders with burning rage. Refusing to let them treat monsters as toys, Hitoya gathers his energy and activates his newly acquired skill. A glowing blue system screen confirms the activation of his Stealth Shot Ghost Strike skill. Looking down at the vast crowd of armed invaders, Hitoya acknowledges that he is severely outnumbered. Hitoya decides to neutralize their fighting power first, activating his precise stealth strike from the shadows. Hitoya unleashes a barrage of silent energy projectiles, aiming to destroy the raiders' weapons from above. The blue energy bolts strike with pinpoint accuracy, shattering daggers and bows in a flash. The club-wielding raider panics, desperately shouting to find out if they are under a skill attack. Another raider scuffs, reminding his ally that this is merely a weak F-rank dungeon. Hitoya realizes that without their weapons, these human challengers might be completely unable to use skills. Hitoya deduces that human skills in this world are actually powers that reside within their weapons. A wave of clarity washes over Hitoya as his glowing blue eyes widen in realization. Down below, one of the raiders angrily activates his glowing weapon skill to straight back. Hitoya contemplates the distinction between monster skills and human weapon-based abilities. Hitoya realizes that destroying their weapons is the key to completely neutralizing the dungeon challengers. Another energy bolt strikes with a sharp crack, shattering a raider's trident into pieces. A second weapon is instantly vaporized, leaving the startled raider completely defenseless. The confused raiders panic, screaming that they cannot see where the silent attacks are coming from. Suddenly, a raider wearing special goggles activates a vision-boosting skill and spots Hitoya's location. Hitoya looks surprised, realizing that human weapon skills can be used for utility rather than just attacks. An aggressive raider swings his glowing sword downward, unleashing a Windblade skill attack. Hitoya nimbly slides along the ground, completely evading the powerful green energy slash. Hitoya narrows his glowing blue eyes, focusing entirely on dodging the incoming skill attacks. Moving with lightning speed, the glowing blue protagonist sprints directly toward his startled opponents. A commanding voice calls out to the raiders, frantically ordering them to charge in all at once. Panicked raiders gasp in utter disbelief upon witnessing Hitoya's immense power-up cross. Sweating in sheer terror, a raider realizes Hitoya is far too powerful to be a low-rank monster. Overwhelmed by fear, one of the raiders abruptly decides to abandon the battle and flee. The terrified invaders completely lose their morale, screaming that they are withdrawing from the dungeon immediately. The panicked raiders throw down their weapons and flee from the dungeon in a desperate rush. Multiple glowing red system notifications announce that all the dungeon challengers have officially withdrawn from the raid. Hitoya looks on in utter surprise as he realizes his opponents are giving up and fleeing. A glowing green system window appears, announcing the sudden activation of Hitoya's passive dungeon boss skill. Startled by the sudden system alert, Hitoya lets out a bewildered gasp as his eyes widen. Multiple green screens confirm that Hitoya has successfully acquired the fleeing challenger's unique combat skills. Hitoya stands in complete shock, realizing his unique rebirth skill has actually stolen his enemy's abilities. A sudden wave of clarity washes over Hitoya as he watches the invaders flee toward the exit. Hitoya realizes that challengers escaping the dungeon counts as a failure, triggering his skill-stealing ability. The desperate archer screams in fury, angrily reprimanding his fleeing allies for bailing out so early. Holding his bow, the frustrated archer frantically reminds them that this is supposed to be an easy dungeon. Determined to get something out of this raid, the archer plans his next malicious move. The archer maliciously suggests torching the forest to easily harvest valuable materials from the dying monsters. Activating his skill with a fiery roar, the archer prepares to shoot a massive destructive fireball. The cute little wolf pups cry out in absolute terror as a massive fireball hurtles toward them. Hitoya's face contorts with rage as he vows to prevent the archer from harming his companions. Hitoya instantly activates his newly acquired Windblade skill, ready to intercept the incoming fire attack. With a swift, powerful slice, Hitoya's Windblade completely neutralizes the archer's explosive fireball attack. The sharp wind energy continues forward, catching the arrogant archer completely off guard with a sudden slash. With a clean, swift strike, the Windblade completely severs the shocked archer's hand. The mutilated archer screams in agonizing pain as Hitoya lands gracefully in front of the horrified survivors. A terrified raider trembles in absolute shock, realizing Hitoya has somehow copied and used her own skill. Enveloped in a surging, menacing blue aura, Hitoya stands tall, casting an intimidating shadow over the raiders. Glaring with intense, glowing blue eyes, Hitoya coldly warns them that his dungeon is no longer their playground. Shouting in absolute terror, the remaining raiders turn and flee frantically from the menacing blue guardian. With a desperate rush of footsteps, the terrified raiders scramble out of the forest toward the exit. With a loud, echoing rumble, the massive stone doors of the dungeon entrance slowly begin to close. Hitoya watches them leave as his glowing eyes shift to a calm, deep purple hue. He briefly recalls his painful past as a fragile skeleton who was easily destroyed by a single archer. Inside a dimly lit room, the intimidating Dragon Raiders boss, Alvara, mocks the failed dungeon raid. Glaring with sharp red eyes, Alvara coldly declares that useless weaklings are nothing more than meat. A sinister voice asks if the failed raiders were fed to the ground dragon as usual. Smiling smugly, Pedro Detlas, the Lord of East Capital, expresses his sadistic disappointment at missing feeding time. With heavy, panicked footsteps, a group of battered raiders frantically bursts into the hideout to find Alvara. The trembling raider leader desperately explains that the F-rank dungeon has become completely impossible to clear. Alvara's smug expression instantly vanishes, replaced by a tense, questioning look of mild surprise. Inside the Dragon Raiders' hideout, the defeated crew members swear that clearing the dungeon is now impossible. The panicked raiders explain how the dangerous creature inside copied and juggled multiple skills with ease. Sitting on his throne, Alvara angrily accuses them of crawling back just to make pathetic excuses. Glaring down with pure malice, Alvara coldly insults them, calling them nothing but worthless trash. With a terrifying heavy rumble, a massive shadow beast looms behind the horrified, trembling raiders. A sinister command declares it is time to feed the meat to the Grand Dragon. Terrified by the threat of being eaten, the sweating blonde raider groans in absolute horror. Sitting on the sofa and holding a glass of wine, Pedro Detlas smugly calls the feeding a nice little sideshow. Pedro Detlas considers it a strange story, noting that there should not be a dungeon boss in an F-rank dungeon. Pedro Detlas asks if the rumors are true, and Alvara admits the situation smells highly suspicious. The speaker notes that both their sniper and the twin dragon are involved in the raid. Speaker states that the raiding party still has not returned from that F-rank dungeon. Pedro Detlas calculates that rare monsters become rare materials, which translates directly into massive profits. Alvaro views the unknown F-rank boss as prime material, and Pedro Detlas suggests he go investigate personally. Smiling confidently with sharp teeth, Alvara declares that he highly approves of the plan. Alvara demands that his cut of the profits be doubled in exchange for taking the job. A blood-stained gloved hand lies motionless on the dark floor, hinting at a grim fate. The stone structure of the forest mausoleum stands silently amidst the dense sunlit canopy. Returning to the forest mausoleum dungeon, a white wolf pup rolls around happily on the grass. The adorable little wolf pup pants happily, making cheerful yipping sounds in the forest. Hitoya looks down from the tree branch in mild confusion and asks what is wrong. Hitoya drops gracefully from the tree branch, landing softly on the grass next to the pup. The energetic white pup turns around and begins running deeper into the sunlit forest. Hitoya wonders if something has occurred deeper inside the forest as he watches the pup run. Hitoya stands amidst the massive trees, following the eager little pup into the dense woods. Hitoya notes they have traveled quite deep into the forest as the pup peers inside. Hitoya immediately recognizes the glowing cavern as the exact spot where he previously gathered mushrooms. The little white pup barks to get his attention, causing Hitoya to gasp in surprise. Hitoya's glowing purple eye widens in utter disbelief as he spots something unexpected ahead. A giant golden double door radiating a brilliant, holy light appears deep inside the cavern. Hitoya anxiously wonders what this door is and where it came from while the pup barks. Hitoya nervously raises his glowing blue hand toward the mysterious golden gate with a sweat drop. He gently presses his dark, energy-infused hand against the surface of the glowing golden door. A bright flash of light occurs as a golden system screen verifies Hitoya's boss status. A golden system screen announces the rank-up system is online, shocking Hitoya. A powerful shockwave of golden energy violently ripples outward through the mushroom-covered cavern. The blinding light subsides, leaving Hitoya staring in awe at the massive glowing structure. Holding the frightened pup, Hitoya notes the shaking has stopped and wonders about the light. Red warning signals begin to flash across the golden gate, indicating a system change. A red system notification reveals the dungeon rank-up requirements are not met, leaving Hitoya baffled. Hitoya realizes there are specific conditions required for the dungeon to successfully rank up. The red screens explain the gate is locked because it leads to an unexplored dungeon sector. The system displays the gate unlock requirements, stating that a dungeon rank-up is necessary. Hitoya deduces that they must rank up the dungeon in order to open the gate. Hitoya is startled as two winged bird monsters suddenly swoop down from above. Looking up at the sky, Hitoya immediately recognizes the incoming creatures as the twin dragon. Beside Hitoya, the little white pup happily wags its tail, welcoming the familiar creatures. Hitoya asks the bird monsters if it is actually possible for dungeons to increase in rank. Hitoya sweatingly questions whether a dungeon ranking up is a normal occurrence in this world. The gray bird monster admits it has never heard of such a thing happening before. Hitoya asks what happens upon ranking up, but the bird monster confesses it does not know. Hitoya muses that their dungeon might actually be highly unusual compared to others. He ponders their unique situation as the system details the unexplored dungeon sector. The glowing golden gate stands as a pathway to a space no one has ever reached. Hitoya and the white pup gaze ahead with resolute determination, ready to face the unknown. Hitoya warmly thanks the small white wolf pup while the twin dragon birds watch them in silence. A colorful system window displays that they have reached the deepest area of the F-rank Forest Mausoleum. The system notification shifts to announce that they have encountered a locked sector in the dungeon. Bubbles rise through the deep blue water as a low, ominous rumbling sound echoes. A bright sacred altar emerges as system notifications confirm the first sacred ark's lock is officially disengaged. The leafy canopy of the forest casts soft shadows, transitioning the scene back to the quiet woods. Sitting on a massive tree branch, Hitoya casually asks the two gray bird monsters to reveal their names. Looking directly at the twin bird monsters, Hitoya asks if they are finally ready to trust him today. The twin dragon birds stare back in stony silence, their wary eyes glowing with unresolved suspicion. Hitoya sweat drops and quickly backtracks, realizing there is still a thick wall of mistrust between their hearts. A sudden, thunderous rumble shakes the forest, startling Hitoya and the bird monsters as the entrance gate opens. Hitoya and the birds peer through the foliage, sensing the arrival of a dangerous new dungeon challenger. Red warning screens flash as the massive stone doors slowly open, revealing the sinister grin of an intruder. With a heavy thud, a massive clawed beast steps through the gate and onto the forest floor. Level 66 great swordsman Alvara smirks maliciously, plotting to harvest and sell every valuable piece of the dungeon. Hitoya and the twin dragon birds gasp in horror as they realize the raider leader has arrived. Hitoya's eyes widen as he recognizes the terrifying threat of the ruthless dragon raiders leader. Looking down at the massive, dark silhouette of the commander and his armed crew, Hitoya senses unprecedented danger. Recalling his past defeat as a weak skeleton, Hitoya resolves to stop this threat to end his suffering. Hitoya summons a sharp, crackling aura of blue energy around his hand, bracing himself for the upcoming fight. Glaring down from the branch, Hitoya fiercely vows to put a definitive end to the invader's cruelty. Harnessing every stolen skill in his arsenal, Hitoya prepares to launch a direct assault against the menacing leader. Unleashing a torrent of blue energy, Hitoya leaps forward, determined to bring down the formidable enemy commander. A green system screen confirms the activation of his newly acquired stealth shot skill, Ghost Strike. Alvara effortlessly blocks the invisible projectile with his giant greatsword, wearing a mocking, relaxed smirk. Hitoya gasps in utter disbelief upon seeing the enemy commander easily deflect his stealthy attack. Alvara smiles smugly, resting his massive sword on his shoulder after easily deflecting the attack. Trembling on the branch, Hitoya realizes Alvara has already pinpointed his exact hiding spot. Riding atop a terrifying red-eyed dragon beast, Alara looks up mockingly and addresses Hitoya as the dungeon boss. From his high perch, Hitoya looks down at Alvara and his massive army of heavily armed raiders. Alvara's eyes narrow as he suddenly spots the two bird monsters resting on the branch behind Hitoya. The twin dragon birds freeze in absolute terror as Alvara notices their collars have been removed. Glaring coldly with a glowing red eye, Alvara declares that disobedient tools are completely worthless to him. Shaken by the commander's cruelty, the twin dragon birds prepare for a desperate struggle as blue aura surrounds them. Hitoya defiantly steps in front of the frightened birds, shouting that they are living creatures, not tools. Alvara waves his hand dismissively, commanding his large army of raiders to charge and kill everyone. With bloodthirsty grins, the heavily armed dragon raiders charge forward, roaring a terrifying command to kill. The twin dragon birds share a silent, resolute look before preparing to unleash their elemental powers together. The two bird monsters unleash their unique skills, simultaneously activating Hail Flame and Warp Flame in a burst of energy. A devastating combined blast of blazing fire and freezing ice erupts, violently engulfing the charging raiders in chaos. Hitoya looks on in absolute amazement, witnessing the incredible raw power of the Twin Dragonbird's elemental attacks. The devastating elemental blast halts the raiders' advance, causing the terrified foot soldiers to flinch and panic. Seizing the perfect opening, Hitoya thanks the birds and prepares a massive Windblade skill to finish him. Charging a swirling aura of energy, Hitoya combines his Windblade skill with his newly acquired Twist Step skill. A flurry of razor-sharp wind slashes tears through the charging raiders, effortlessly shattering their shields and weapons. Annoyed, Alvara commands his Grand Dragon to devour the traitorous bird monsters first, raising his glowing red ring. The gray bird monster flies up in sudden panic as a sinister red light targets its throat. A glowing red collar materializes around the bird's neck, signaling the terrifying return of the subjugation ring's power. Alvara boasts that the Ring of Subjugation grants absolute control, forcing all monsters to obey humans without question. Smirking sadistically, Alvara threatens to force the bird to obey his commands if it ever dares defy him again. Alvara ruthlessly commands his captive bird monster to execute its wounded counterpart on the bloody floor. The terrified bird monster trembles in agonizing silence under the heavy weight of absolute subjugation. High above, the other bird monster desperately shrieks a frantic warning to its companion to dodge. Spinning around in sudden panic, the bird monster realizes the immense danger looming directly behind it. The Grand Dragon opens its massive toothy jaws to swallow the helpless bird monster whole. Staring into the dragon's throat, the helpless bird monster despairs of escaping its impending doom. Hitoya lunges forward in his glowing blue form, intercepting the massive jaws to rescue the bird. Clutching Hitoya's arm, the stunned bird monster looks up in disbelief at its sudden miraculous survival. Hitoya swiftly flies away, rescuing the bird while the ground-level raiders look on in shock. Furious at the escape, Alvara commands his forces to pursue and capture the fleeing dungeon boss. Safely holding the bird in his arms, Hitoya notes its uncontrollable trembling with deep concern. Hitoya realizes the deep psychological trauma and fear Alvara previously branded into the Twin Dragon Bird's hearts. Looking down with fierce resolve, Hitoya addresses the frightened Twin Dragon Bird monster directly. Hitoya sets the birds down and gently instructs them to run deeper into the forest. The shocked bird monsters ask if he truly intends to face the raider army completely alone. Hitoya smiles warmly, promising to hold the line until they are both finally and completely free. Tears well in the birds' mismatched eyes as they witness Hitoya's selfless kindness and determination. Turning away, Hitoya leaps down from the high branch to confront the invading army of raiders. The bloodthirsty dragon raiders charge forward with weapons raised, eager to take down the dungeon boss. The title screen transitions, heralding the imminent and decisive battle against the ruthless commander Alvara. Hitoya realizes that to save the dungeon, he must destroy the Grand Dragon's glowing red collar. A close-up reveals the pulsing red collar of subjugation tightly bound around the Grand Dragon's neck. Hitoya prepares to execute a decisive strike by combining his stealth shot skill with another powerful ability. Feathers drift through the green canopy as Hitoya vows to protect everyone from the raiders' cruelty. Suddenly, the Grand Dragon unleashes a massive, devastating blast of concentrated blue energy from its jaws. Alvara reacts in pure shock as a massive, blazing energy attack is deflected by his greatsword. Hitoya gasps in astonishment as the twin dragon birds suddenly fly back into the battlefield above him. Hitoya watches in utter disbelief as the bird monsters return to help him in the fight. The birds tell Hitoya to focus on breaking the collar while they hold off the dragon. Working together, the twin dragon birds unleash a combined elemental blast of raging fire and freezing ice. Alvara blocks the onslaught with his sword, mocking the weak creatures for daring to oppose him. Enraged, Alvara swings his glowing sword downward, screaming at the monsters to submit to his power. One of the bird monsters screams in agony under the crushing weight of Alvara's counterattack. Enveloped in a blazing blue aura, Hitoya declares his final decision to end this dungeon's suffering. A system screen echoes Hitoya's fierce determination to shatter the horrific cycle of subjugation and pain. Hitoya charges forward like a meteor, aiming a high-speed strike directly at the dragon's collar. Hitoya's strike connects perfectly, shattering the dragon's glowing red collar into countless fragments. The powerful impact throws Alvara backward as his giant greatsword cracks under the sheer force. Freed from the absolute command collar, the massive dragon thrashes violently as its shackles crumble away. Alvara tumbles helplessly through the air, completely disarmed and stripped of his monstrous control. A sudden, sharp crack sounds as the red subjugation ring on Alvara's finger shatters into pieces. Crashing to the ground, a terrified Alvara gasps that Hitoya is a complete monster. Glaring upward, Alvara can barely process the impossible fact that a monster broke his subjugation collar. Alvara recalls how the absolute command device is supposed to be completely unbreakable for any monster. He realizes with horror that the dungeon boss shattered the legendary ring without a moment's hesitation. Still, Alvara refuses to back down, drawing on his sinister dark aura to continue the fight. Grinning maniacally, Alvara vows to reduce both Hitoya and the entire forest dungeon to absolute dust. Alvara swings his cracked greatsword down, unleashing a devastating wave of purple energy. The shattered hilt of Alvara's giant greatsword begins to fracture further under his desperate chaotic power. Descending from above, Hitoya unleashes a blazing blue aura to deliver the final decisive blow. Hitoya sits peacefully with small forest monsters and the twin dragon birds, determined to protect the dungeon. Hitoya, enveloped in a glowing blue aura, fiercely declares that this battle ends right now. Hitoya descends like a meteor, shattering Alvara's greatsword with a devastating lightning-infused strike. A massive blazing blue explosion erupts within the forest canopy, clearing the battlefield. Sunbeams filter through the forest leaves, casting light on the tiny creatures below. One of the adorable round creatures happily looks up as sunlight warms the forest floor. As Hitoya kneels with the birds, a defeated Alvara crawls away, desperately shouting that they shouldn't look down on him. A heavy resonant rumbling sound echoes through the air as dark pressure melts. The imposing silhouette of the giant grand dragon looms with menacing, glowing red eyes. A massive shockwave hits the ground, sending the defeated and bloodied commander crashing face-first into the dirt. The colossal black dragon glares down coldly, stating that Alvara has spent his entire life squeezing others dry. Looking down at Alvara, the Grand Dragon explains how he remained chained, unable to resist the absolute command of the subjugation colors. The Grand Dragon somberly concludes that his forced obedience under the Raider's command makes him guilty as well. Gritting his teeth in furious humiliation, Alvara curses the dragon with a bloodshot, enraged red eye. Hitoya looks on in surprise and deep empathy as he listens to the proud dragon's painful confession. The twin dragon birds look upward with a mixture of sorrow and understanding for their former companion's plight. A blue system interface screen confirms that the number of active challengers in the dungeon is dropped to 0. Looking up at the massive dragon, Hitoya views a prompt offering to recruit the level 71 beast. Close up on Hitoya's face as his glowing purple eyes soften with deep understanding and compassion. Hitoya asks the Grand Dragon if he wants to join the dungeon as one of its monsters. Colossal Grand Dragon remains silent, looking down at Hitoya with a complex, unreadable expression. Smiling gently, Hitoya closes the system prompt and tells the dragon that he completely understands. The gray bird monster asks if he is sure about letting go of such a powerful recruit. Hitoya explains that he refuses to force the dragon into another chain after its long suffering. Hitoya smiles warmly, noting that the proud dragon surely has its own path to pursue outside. The Grand Dragon announces his new purpose to go and free his remaining enslaved comrades. Silhouettes of various monsters locked in iron cages visualize those still enslaved by the Dragon Raiders. The dragon laments his past as a chained beast, doing nothing but taking lives and ruins. Shaking off his dark past, the proud dragon bathes in a beam of pure light. With a powerful beat of his massive wings, the free dragon prepares to take flight. The dragon bids farewell to the twin dragon birds and their kind new master as he departs. The massive black dragon soars majestically into the bright sky, leaving his dark past behind. The high stone gates of the dungeon stand silent as the dragon's presence fades away. The twin dragon birds look up at the empty sky, noting with awe that he is truly gone. Smiling gently, Hitoya looks at the two remaining monsters with a warm, welcoming expression. Hitoya asks the twin dragon birds if they also wish to return to the outside world. While particles of green light heal the dungeon, the gray bird monsters admit this place is rather strange. Looking directly at Hitoya, one of the birds softly confesses that it doesn't hate this dungeon. A white speech bubble reminds Hitoya that they previously asked the birds for their names. The twin gray bird monsters proudly introduce themselves as Ata and Yata. Hitoya smiles joyfully as he cuddles Ata and Yata, cementing their new bond of friendship. A yellow system notification initializes the dungeon rank-up system and begins counting the failed challengers. A bright golden screen displays the current F-rank dungeon's name as the Shrine Mausoleum. Hitoya gasps in utter shock as a massive burst of golden light signals met rank-up requirements. Enveloped in blazing golden energy, the dungeon prepares to transition into the Forest Mausoleum. A golden system notification screen officially announces that the boss Archimonde is dead. Floating amidst a vibrant green void, Hitoya and his companions witness the massive scale of the change. A golden panel confirms that the dungeon rank-up to E-rank Forest Mausoleum is fully complete. Hitoya and the twin dragon birds gasp in astonishment as the dungeon's geography violently shifts. Light floods into a colossal new cavern filled with massive ancient roots as the dungeon expands. Hitoya gasps in disbelief as the entire terrain of the dungeon dramatically shifts and changes. The notification screen confirms that massive rubble has suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Looking at the falling debris, Hitoya wonders if the outer layer of the dungeon walls collapsed. Hitoya ponders the true meaning of a dungeon rank-up as a bright aura surrounds him. A sharp, high-pitched cry echoes from deep within the rustling green leaves of the forest. A small, white, fluffy wolf monster comes tumbling down from the canopy with a joyful cry. Hitoya kneels down in relief, welcoming back the white wolf and asking what has happened. The adorable white wolf yips excitedly, trying its hardest to convey an urgent message to Hitoya. Though Hitoya cannot understand the wolf's language, he appreciates the creature's desperate effort to communicate. The little white wolf runs ahead, prompting Hitoya and the twin dragon birds to follow behind it. Hitoya is certain the white wolf is leading them to something of great importance. Following the wolf's lead, Hitoya instructs his companions to venture deeper into the dense forest. The tiny wolf's high-pitched yips echo through the sun-dappled leaves of the forest canopy. A rustling sound startles Hitoya and the birds as they navigate through the dark tree trunks. Hitoya is stunned to see a patch of glowing green mushrooms suddenly moving on their own. The vibrant green mushrooms pop up from the forest floor with strange rhythmic movements. Floating level 1 status windows reveal that the jumping green mushrooms are actually active dungeon monsters. Hitoya exclaims in surprise, realizing these ordinary-looking forest fungi have been monsters the entire time. Encircled by status tags, Hitoya stands completely bewildered by the sudden appearance of the tiny mushroom monsters. Hitoya blinks in confusion, completely caught off guard by the bizarre events unfolding around him. A massive ancient stone gate bathed in a brilliant golden light suddenly reveals itself in the forest. System notifications announce that dungeon rank-up requirements are met and the Shadow Gate lock is disengaging. Hitoya yells in excitement as he realizes a previously unexplored sector of the dungeon has unlocked. Hitoya joyfully cradles the wolf, realizing this secret gate is what it wanted to show him. Guided by the hopping mushrooms, Hitoya and his companions prepare to enter the glowing golden gateway. 3 adorable green mushrooms eagerly hop through the threshold of the newly opened stone portal. Hitoya realizes the mushrooms want him to enter, noting friendly dungeon monsters are on his side. Hitoya resolves to step inside, hoping the unexplored sector will reveal more secrets about the dungeon. The massive golden double doors swing wide open, revealing a dark, mysterious passage leading deep inside. Leading his companions, Hitoya walks down a grand stone staircase flanked by glowing green mushrooms. The stairs plunge deep into the dark underground depths of the newly unlocked forest mausoleum. Reaching the bottom, Hitoya initially fears they hit a dead end, but then spots something unusual. Hitoya notices a faint golden glow radiating from a patch of loose dirt on the ground. The green mushrooms gather around Hitoya and the white wolf, bouncing with excited anticipation. The helpful mushrooms flatten their heads into spade-like shapes to begin digging into the glowing soil. Hitoya watches in astonishment as the little mushroom monsters begin digging up the buried treasure. A soft scraping sound echoes through the stone chamber as the industrious mushrooms dig together. A glowing golden chest emerges, prompting Hitoya to identify it as the 6th Sacred Ark. Hitoya marvels at the discovery, realizing they have unearthed the literal treasure chest in the dungeon. System text confirms the materialization of the 6th Sacred Ark as a reward for the rank-up. Hitoya realizes rank-ups spawn actual treasure chests, comparing the dungeon's bizarre mechanics to a fantasy game. The twin dragon birds chirp with pure delight at the sight of the glittering golden treasure chest. The birds eagerly ask if more treasure will appear as the dungeon continues to rank up. Hitoya points out that the presence of rare treasure will inevitably attract many new challengers. The twin dragon birds look at each other, suddenly realizing the danger of his worry. Hitoya worries that valuable treasures will draw more ruthless raiders and stronger enemies to their dungeon. A close-up reveals the ancient, intricate carvings decorating the sides of the glowing golden chest. While the birds debate the danger, the excited white wolf urges Hitoya to open the chest. Hitoya decides to check the contents, instructing his companions to step back in case of danger. Hitoya extends his hand toward the 6th Sacred Ark, wondering what mysterious reward lies sealed inside. Hitoya reaches out his black-clawed hand to touch the glowing 6th Sacred Ark chest, triggering a bright golden burst of light. Hitoya is amazed to discover a star-shaped golden accessory called the Right Hand of Prometheus inside the chest. A golden system window initializes the newly acquired equipment item and displays its special granted effect. Surrounded by a bright golden pillar of light, Hitoya gasps in realization that this is no ordinary ring. Hitoya stares in utter horror and disbelief, completely overwhelmed by the ring's incredible and threatening aura. The monsters eagerly ask what kind of spectacular power the granted effect actually unleashes in battle. Hitoya gazes at the glowing ring in his hand, recognizing its immense utility but hesitating to use it. Hitoya worries that this dangerous power could easily drag every creature in the dungeon into an unavoidable battle. Hitoya resolves to avoid using this mysterious and highly volatile treasure's power unless absolutely necessary. Turning to the waiting monsters, Hitoya apologetically explains that he cannot reveal the ring's power just yet. Hitoya remains deeply intrigued by the unknown power concealed within this legendary, newly unearthed treasure. Hitoya reflects on the endless mysteries still surrounding their rapidly evolving and transforming dungeon. Hitoya questions his own mysterious nature and his strange role as the dungeon's central boss. A soft scuff sounds as Hitoya takes a quiet, deliberate step forward across the dusty stone floor. Hitoya's eyes widen in surprise as a brilliant new inspiration suddenly flashes through his mind. Hitoya turns to his monstrous companions with a bright, warm smile and asks to borrow their strength. A gentle rustling sounds as a dense crowd of cute green mushroom monsters gathers closely together. The little green mushroom monsters tilt their heads, staring back in silent, adorable confusion. Hitoya explains that they can utilize the mushroom's unique abilities to restructure the layout of the dungeon. Hitoya joyfully proposes that they all cooperate to construct a safe and secure hideout inside the forest. Hitoya, the white wolves, and the mushrooms diligently dig up the earth to clear out a spacious chamber. Together, they collect and stack the stone rubble that collapsed during the dungeon's recent rank-up. They cover the entire exterior of the structure with dense leafy branches to camouflage their new sanctuary. Hitoya smiles brightly in suspenseful anticipation as they prepare to unveil their finished creation. Hitoya cheers triumphantly alongside his companions, celebrating the completion of their beautifully hidden underground sanctuary. A newly updated diagram outlines the layout of their customized forest hideout and its surrounding pathways. Hitoya happily thanks everyone for their hard work, prompting the twin birds to shyly dismiss his gratitude. Hitoya showcases their secure hideout nestled safely beneath massive tree roots protected from external magical attacks. Hitoya points out a hidden emergency tunnel that provides a secret escape route deep into the forest. The dark, cool subterranean tunnel is filled with a soft and comforting green mystical glow. The weary monsters find the quiet, dim underground hideout to be incredibly peaceful and cozy. Hitoya reassures his companions of their safety inside the hideout, prompting a happy yip from the wolf. Hitoya smiles gently as he looks down at the exhausted creatures sleeping peacefully side by side. Although his future remains uncertain, Hitoya feels a profound sense of warmth and quiet relief. Hitoya hopes their dungeon's growth will continue to create a welcoming home where everyone truly belongs. Hitoya reflects on his past life, where advancement meant nothing but ruthless, endless competition and cold metrics. He recalls the exhausting pressure of climbing a social ladder that never seemed to have an end. In contrast, he appreciates how his battles in this world reward him with actual, tangible strength. A gentle, peaceful smile touches Hitoya's face as he embraces his newfound life and purpose. He understands that his growing power serves to defend the precious home he has built. Hitoya quietly kneels down on the cool stone floor to rest beside his sleeping companion. Hitoya notes that he must venture outside again soon to stay vigilant against potential new intruders. Ada opens one eye in the dim light, watching their sleeping master with quiet, unwavering devotion. Outside, Hitoya carefully inspects the hidden forest exit and is pleased to find no issues. Gentle splashing sounds as a pair of slender blue talons steps into the cool, clear stream. Hitoya turns his head in surprise as he senses someone approaching from behind the trees. Ada and Yada shift their feet restlessly by the water's edge, looking unusually hesitant. Noticing their uneasy behavior, Hitoya gently asks Ada what is bothering them. Ada looks up with a deeply serious and tense expression, silent for a long moment. Finally, the birds earnestly ask Hitoya why he does so much to protect them. Startled by the sudden question, Hitoya blinks in surprise as Ada asks him who he really is. The twin birds eagerly press Hitoya, wanting to know more about him and if he has a family. Hitoya hesitantly reveals his parents were normal humans, reflecting on his previous life as his thoughts darken. Hitoya recalls the bitter and isolating coldness that defined his earliest memory in his past life. A warm and comforting hand suddenly reaches down to gently take the small child's hand. The young boy stands wrapped in a warm coat, looking up gratefully at his adoptive parents. His parents warmly reassure him that they will always be safe together, regardless of any danger. Filled with deep affection, the young child calls out lovingly to his father and mother. Hitoya smiles gently as he reflects on his desire to recreate that same warm family bond. Hitoya warmly thanks the crying white wolf, gently reassuring the creature that he is completely fine now. Ada stares ahead with a deeply serious and contemplative expression, silently observing their mysterious master. The narrative shifts to focus on the mysteries surrounding the dungeon boss's unknown level. Questions arise regarding how Hitoya possesses the power to shatter the highly restrictive subjugation rings. Despite the remaining secrets, his companion feels they finally understand why Hitoya resides in this dungeon. A massive, intricately detailed glass dome structures the grand and prosperous inner district of the city. Under the warm evening light, the shining dome of the city's inner district stands tall. A formal message reveals that a critical petition has arrived from the Lord of the East Capital. Lying down, a silver-haired researcher reads a request demanding the complete destruction of the forest mausoleum. The relaxed, silver-haired figure finds amusement in the letter, noting it is sometimes worthwhile to read boring requests. A sly, knowing smirk spreads across the face of the mysterious silver-haired individual. Colorful test tubes glow softly as the researcher muses over the bizarre nature of the F-rank dungeon. Facing his lab equipment, the researcher resolves to thoroughly study the peculiar properties of the target dungeon. Bright sunlight filters through the clear blue sky, casting a radiant glow over the shifting clouds. The peaceful blue sky stretches infinitely, signaling a deceptive calm before the coming storm. Deep within the lush green forest, the ancient crumbling stone mausoleum stands silent and hidden. A low, menacing rumble suddenly echoes violently through the atmosphere, signaling sudden danger approaching. Shards of dust and debris rain down as the powerful subterranean vibrations intensify. A sudden, violent tremor startles Hitoya and his companion monsters inside their newly constructed sanctuary. A flashing red warning system alerts them that dungeon challengers have successfully breached the entrance. A group of heavily armored intruders arrives, arrogantly dismissing the dungeon as an ordinary, easy-to-clear location. Alarmed by the shaking gate, the twin birds realize a new faction of challengers has entered. With a calm look of resolve in his glowing eyes, Hitoya confidently declares he will handle them. Swiftly leaping into action, a powerful figure bursts through the dense forest canopy. Charging forward, Hitoya fiercely vows to protect his precious home and companions from any incoming threat. Hitoya drops down directly from the sky, catching the arrogant intruders completely off guard. Recognizing him as the dungeon boss, the 6 challengers prepare to unleash their active combat skills. The sword-wielding challenger commands his allies to strike, fiercely calling for them to take Hitoya down. Observing their skills, Hitoya calmly notes the rising level of average challengers but refuses to panic. Summoning his determination, Hitoya resolves to win this battle to protect his precious forest family. A glowing system window initializes, announcing the activation of his newly acquired Earth-Split Quake skill. Hitoya recalls the earth-rendering skill used by Alvara, the formidable boss of the Dragon Raiders. Harnessing that same devastating power, Hitoya prepares to unleash the seal to defend his dungeon. System details confirm the skill fires powerful shockwaves that collapse everything within a charging area. Recognizing Alvaro's signature skill, the invading knights panic and frantically scream for everyone to dodge. A massive, blinding blast of blue energy erupts violently, engulfing the entire battlefield in shockwaves. Billowing clouds of thick dust and smoke rise into the air as the intense energy dissipates. One of the invading knights is sent flying into the sky, desperately activating a defensive levitation skill. Below, the ground crumbles completely into a deep chasm, leaving the remaining invaders stranded on a high cliff. Looking up at the terrified intruders, Hitoya firmly commands them to go back to their own world. Walking away, Hitoya warns them that if they ever return, he will not show mercy next time. Clicking his tongue in frustration, the escaping brown-haired knight orders his retreating squad to open the dungeon gate. Desperately fleeing, the retreating knights panic about going back empty-handed and losing their reward. Fleeing alongside a floating gray fish monster, the knight confidently reassures his companion of their success. The strange gray fish monster floats mid-air, staring blankly with wide glowing red spiral eyes. Hitoya activates his vision skill to trace the strange glowing creature escaping in the distance. Swimming gracefully through the air, the spiral-eyed fish floats away, leaving a trail of bubbles. Watching the intruders escape, Hitoya realizes that clearing the dungeon was not their actual objective. The towering stone dungeon gate looms silently over the green forest as the intruders finally vanish. Hitoya stands in silence, looking up with a deeply concerned and contemplative expression. A sudden realization strikes Hitoya, causing his glowing purple eye to widen in surprise. Multiple glowing system windows announce that Hitoya has acquired 6 new skills from the escaped intruders. A bold system notification proudly announces the acquisition of 6 brand new combat skills. Surrounded by glowing screens, Hitoya resolutely prepares himself for whatever unknown enemies might arrive next. Hitoya activates his new Sky Swim skill, joyfully floating upside down alongside his twin bird companions. The twin birds cheer happily as Hitoya confirms he acquired his new flight ability from the recent battle. Losing control of his trajectory, Hitoya yelps in surprise as his foot collides with a thick tree branch. Hitoya crashes straight into the thick forest canopy with a loud yelp, startling his bird companions. Panic-stricken, the twin birds dive quickly through the foliage to check on their fallen master. Hanging sheepishly upside down from a branch, Hitoya chuckles and admits that immediately mastering a new skill is tough. Floating upright once more, Hitoya curiously asks his companions when they first began using their skills. Turning its head, the dark bird explains that they possessed their skills right after hatching. Hitoya is utterly astounded to learn that the creatures have possessed magical abilities since their birth. Hitoya looks down thoughtfully, wondering if all monsters in this world are born with such innate talents. The birds clarify that some creatures, like the dungeon's white wolves, are born without any skills at all. Hitoya grows curious about humans, asking if any of them are ever born with natural skills. The dark birds explain that monsters are the only living beings naturally born with magical skills. A dark, mystical aura frames the revelation that humans cannot use any skills without relying on magic tools. Hitoya recalls how breaking the invaders' weapons instantly stripped them of their powerful combat skills. He realizes that human skills are artificial powers housed inside weapons, which are known as magic tools. The bird drops a grim revelation explaining that magic tools are crafted by processing skilled monsters as materials. Hitoya is left completely horrified, his purple eyes wide with shock at this brutal truth. He realizes with growing dread that the weapons he shattered were once living, breathing monsters. A cold sweat breaks out on Hitoya's face as he reels from the realization of his past actions. A gentle teasing voice cuts through his despair, calling him an absolute softy of a boss. Swooping down, the dark bird reassures Hitoya, telling him there is no need to look so devastated. The bird explains that humans capture monsters with subjugation rings to use them as materials for magic tools. Cruel flashbacks depict knights using heavy chains and glowing red subjugation rings to haul helpless monsters away. The bird solemnly explains that magic tools are essentially enslaved monsters forced to serve humans even after death. Reassuring Hitoya, the bird suggests that shattering those weapons actually sets the trapped monsters free. Hearing those comforting words, a gentle, quiet smile finally returns to Hitoya's relieved face. He accepts that while this world holds deep tragedies, he must focus on his immediate path. Flying over his forest home, Hitoya vows to use his power to protect everyone in the dungeon. Meanwhile, a relaxed caramel-haired man laughs, amused that the formidable dungeon boss remains undefeated. Smirking slyly, the caramel-haired man muses that this makes his trip to the East Capital worthwhile. Standing behind a kneeling knight, Pedro Detlas, the Lord of East Capital, dismisses the failed intruders as useless. Pedro Detlas grins greedily, calling himself a lucky man despite the initial setback. A hand reaches up to welcome the spiral-eyed fish, celebrating that a legendary figure has taken the job. Genius researcher Elaine Tulin stands elegantly as the floating fish swims around his tan hand. The strange fish glows warmly as it lands on Elaine Tulin's outstretched finger. Sitting back, Elaine Tulin smiles with satisfaction as the floating fish screens display the captured battle footage. The genius researcher Elaine Tulin deduces that the holographic footage and floating letters are the knight's creations. Hitoya's recorded preliminary reconnaissance of the bizarre dungeon comes to a close on the screen. Lord Pedro Detlas eagerly agrees with the findings and asserts that their next step is obvious. Sweating nervously, Pedro Detlas asks for clarification on what their next action should be. Elaine Tulin firmly declares that they must conduct a thorough on-site investigation of the dungeon. Smirking confidently, Elaine Tulin vows to study the outrageous dungeon inside and out before taking action. Elaine Tulin coldly reveals that his ultimate plan is to completely destroy the dungeon afterward. Hitoya rests on a tree branch, gently reassuring his avian companions that their wolf's joy is all that matters. A sudden, mysterious voice startles Hitoya by asking him if he is the dungeon boss. Hitoya frantically looks around in midair, desperately trying to locate the source of the voice. The quiet sound of floating water bubbles signals the arrival of the mysterious intruder. Hitoya recoils in absolute shock as the elegant intruder suddenly materializes right out of thin air. Crouching on the ground, Hitoya realizes he has never faced a formidable challenger like this before. Elaine Tulin casually adjusts his glasses and asks where the dungeon's treasure is hidden. Hitoya anxiously realizes that the invader's true target has always been the dungeon's precious treasure. Hitoya is deeply unsettled, questioning the meaning of a total clear of the dungeon. Elaine Tulin explains the grim fate that awaits any dungeon stripped of its treasure. Elaine Tulin delivers the final shocking revelation that the dungeon will completely disappear from the world. Hitoya stands completely frozen in horror as the terrifying weight of the truth sinks in. Elaine Tulin explains that the complete erasure of the dungeon is simply how their world functions. Anticipating resistance, Elaine Tulin smiles and prepares to draw his glowing, fish-like weapons. A sudden flash of brilliant blue light erupts as Elaine Tulin prepares to strike. Elaine Tulin launches a barrage of sharp, needle-like fish weapons directly at the dungeon boss. Hitoya observes the overwhelming arsenal and prepares to launch his own defense to protect his home. Hitoya fiercely commands the attacker to stay away from his friends as his birds dive in. Hitoya channels a massive surge of blue energy from his chest to shield his companions. Elaine Tulin lowers his glasses with a smirk, suggesting that the boss needs some cooling down. Deciding they have tested enough for now, Elaine Tulin calls an end to their initial confrontation. Elaine Tulin bids the boss farewell, stepping backward into his watery teleportation gate. Hitoya and his bird companions are left standing in bewildered silence in the empty forest. Glowing system screen initializes, confirming that the number of active challengers has dropped to 0. Hitoya is deeply confused when no new skills appear on a status screen after the battle. Hitoya looks down in confusion, trying to manually trigger his skill copying ability. A red warning screen flashes, confirming that there are no skills available for him to acquire. Hitoya panics upon realizing he cannot copy Elaine's skills because the challenger did not fail. Hitoya recalls that his growth and the dungeon's rank depend on defeating and copying challenger skills. A system scan reveals that Elaine Tulin's status and skills remain completely unknown and unreadable. The shadow of the brilliant researcher looms large, casting a dark cloud over the dungeon's future. Steeling his resolve, Hitoya clenches his fist and vows to face whatever trials this world brings. Elaine Tulin decides to delay his dungeon clear to prioritize a new, intriguing objective first. Pedro Detlas eagerly questions Elaine Tulin about the outcome of his initial research foray. Elaine Tulin smiles mysteriously, explaining that his sudden change of plans is solely for his research. Elaine Tulin reveals his desire to capture the twin dragon monsters before clearing the dungeon completely. Greedily rubbing his hands together, Pedro Detlas begs Elaine to capture the dungeon boss as well. Pedro Detlas promises to provide replacement forces, noting the high price the boss would fetch as material. Pedro Detlas offers to supply the researcher with as many rings of restraint as he needs. Elaine Tulin casually accepts the offer, warning Pedro not to slow down his progress. Pedro Detlas obsequiously bows, assuring the formidable researcher that everything will go smoothly. Pedro Detlas boasts that their newly hired hunter once defeated a legendary grand dragon. Pedro Detlas proudly reveals the massive dragon talons mounted on the wall, introducing the legendary hunter. Hitoya resolves to guard the golden treasure box with his white wolf pup and twin bird companions. Inside the box lies the star-shaped Prometheus arc, prompting a warning that the dungeon will collapse if stolen. Holding the glowing treasure, Hitoya somberly realizes that the entire dungeon is doomed to collapse if it is taken. Glaring with determination, Hitoya declares that they absolutely cannot allow anyone to steal this precious treasure. The tactical map outlines the layout of the dungeon, marking the hideout, the gate, and the treasure's location. Static fills the air as a red warning notification screen suddenly flags that a dungeon challenger has been detected. Perched on a high branch, Hitoya notices the red system alert and warns that challengers have successfully entered. A bright, thunderous flash echoes as two giant beams of golden light tear through the dark dungeon entrance. Hitoya is forced into a defensive stance, gasping in surprise as the powerful energy beams crash toward him. Smiling calmly, Elaine Twillin steps through the watery portal with his small floating fish and greets Hitoya once again. Hitoya furiously demands if Elaine Twillin has returned to steal the treasure, knowing it will destroy his home. Smiling, Elaine Twillin reveals that his true objective today is to capture a live specimen for his research. Hitoya recoils in absolute shock as he watches Elaine Twillin's unusual fish-shaped weapon suddenly spring into action. The silver fish-shaped weapon suddenly swells to a colossal size, looming menacingly over the startled dungeon boss. With a sudden heavy slam, the giant fish weapon thrashes its tail, kicking up a massive dust blob. The giant silver fish dives downwards through the air, completely overtaking Hitoya's field of vision. Trapped behind a glowing circular barrier, Hitoya panics as he realizes he has been completely caged in. Elaine Twillin holds up a red spiked collar, calmly asking where the twin dragon monsters are currently hiding. Staring at the ominous red collar, Hitoya immediately recognizes the cruel subjugation rings used to enslave monsters. Refusing to let his companions suffer, Hitoya activates his Windblade skill to break free of the trap. A knight wearing red and silver armor walks away into the deep foliage carrying a massive spear. The voice notes that everything is going perfectly, just as Sir Twillin predicted from his initial research. The heavy metal boot of the red and silver armored knight steps firmly onto the soft grass. Sensing a strange disturbance nearby, the small white wolf pup instantly perks its ears up in alert. The location is identified as the quiet hideout of the E-rank dungeon known as the Forest Mausoleum. The curious white wolf pup peers out from its stone cave, looking around in complete confusion. Sniffing the damp forest air, the white wolf pup desperately tries to identify the unfamiliar scent approaching. The white wolf pup recalls the terrifying memory of the red and silver armored knight invading their home. A sudden gasp escapes the white wolf pup as it realizes the invader has found their hiding spot. Surrounded by trembling green mushroom spirits, the small white wolf pup shivers in absolute terror as danger looms. Tears well up in the tiny white wolf pup's eyes as heavy, ominous footsteps approach their cave. Remembering Hitoya's fierce vow to protect their home, the wolf pup gathers its courage to face the threat. Squealing with determination, the small white wolf pup charges forward to defend the hideout and its family. Hitoya forcefully shatters the glowing circular barrier, leaping backward into the air to regain his footing. Hitoya flips gracefully through the air, agilely dodging a barrage of sharp yellow light spears. Surrounded by his floating fish weapons, Elaine Twillin calmly states that he must first restrain the dungeon boss. Hitoya unleashes a powerful green wind blade, clashing directly against Elaine Twillin's incoming yellow energy attacks. Standing firmly with his back turned, Elaine Twillin watches as the powerful shockwave of wind sweeps past. Hitoya fiercely declares his resolve, swearing that he will personally smash every single ring of subjugation he finds. A mysterious voice counters Hitoya's claim, coldly stating that breaking such a device is impossible for a monster. Elaine Twillin calmly explains that it is biologically impossible for monsters to break the highly advanced rings of subjugation. Defying Elaine's words, Hitoya counters that he already broke the Twin Dragon's rings and the legendary Grand Dragon's ring too. Traumatic memories of the helpless monsters being tortured by the glowing red collars flash back into Hitoya's mind. Elaine Twillin's smug composure completely shatters as he stares at Hitoya in utter disbelief. Clenching his fist around the glowing red collar, Elaine Twillin asks with growing shock if Hitoya truly broke them. Elaine Twillin realizes that this mysterious boss is a completely unique monster, capable of feats never before recorded in history. Hitoya dives forward at incredible speed, realizing that Elaine's ultimate target was never the Twin Dragons. The sudden realization hits hard that the researcher's true objective has always been the dungeon boss himself. Hitoya attacks fiercely, demanding to know why humans would ever construct and use such a cruel tool. A dark, blood-red aura frames the terrifying truth that these rings cruelly enslave both the monster's body and soul. A dark thought notes that the glowing red collar is such a cruel tool of enslavement. Hitoya maneuvers defensively in midair as Elaine Twillin coldly acknowledges the harsh truth of his statement. Lowering his head slightly, Elaine Twillin grimly adds emphasis to his agreement about the tool's cruelty. Deep in the forest, the small white wolf pup points its muzzle upward, letting out a desperate howl. A loud, long howl echoes through the misty woods. Mournful sound slowly fades, leaving a heavy silence in the air. Hitoya freezes in sudden shock as the distant cry of his companion reaches him. Recognizing the howl, Hitoya realizes with horror that an emergency has occurred deeper in the forest. Holding a glowing red collar, Elaine Tulin mockingly asks if Hitoya plans to leave and help his companion. Hitoya grits his teeth in silent frustration, torn between the researcher and the distress call. Prioritizing the safety of his companions, Hitoya turns his back on Elaine Tulin and leaps away to investigate. Elaine Tulin watches the departing dungeon boss with a calm, analytical gaze. The researcher silently rejoices at finally finding a unique monster capable of shattering the subjugation rings. He muses that his only remaining task is to figure out how to capture this remarkable specimen. Back in the forest, the trembling white wolf pup whines in absolute terror as danger closes in. The small white wolf pup desperately runs away as sharp purple spikes suddenly erupt from the ground behind it. A cruel, blonde-haired spear user in red armor sneers at the pup's impressive sense of smell. The malicious challenger mockingly praises the pup's efforts, declaring he will test his new weapon on it. A system box identifies the high-level invader as Ronsolo Lopez, a level 61 spear user. Trembling in fear, the crying white wolf pup whimpers as Ronsolo Lopez tells it to feel honored. A sudden flash of blue light erupts as Hitoya arrives just in time to block the incoming spear attack. Shielding his companion, Hitoya realizes with growing anger that another challenger has invaded his home. Hitoya fiercely commands the attacker to stay away from the pup, declaring himself as the opponent. Ronsolo Lopez grins with sinister excitement, instantly recognizing the newcomer as the dungeon boss. Hitoya swiftly parries a powerful sweeping strike from the heavy purple glowing spear. Hitoya realizes he must hold back his most destructive skill attacks to avoid destroying the forest around them. Exchanging rapid blows, Hitoya notes that this seasoned spear fighter delivers exceptionally sharp and heavy strikes. The two combatants square off in a clearing, warily sizing each other up for the next clash. Hitoya glares intensely at the opponent, his sharp blue eyes full of focus and determination. Hitoya gazes warily at the massive white weapon, feeling an unsettling sense of familiarity. A dark memory flashes of the legendary Grand Dragon who was ruthlessly hunted down and harvested. A haunting image of the defeated dragon's eye lingers, showcasing the cruelty of human hunters. Horrified, Hitoya realizes the weapon was crafted by slaughtering and processing the Grand Dragon for materials. Ronsolo Lopez sneers, asking if Hitoya is indeed the one who previously freed the dragon. Hitoya stands frozen in disgust as Ronsolo mockingly thanks him for enabling the creation of this powerful spear. Ronsolo Lopez bursts into cruel laughter, highly amused by the look of pure horror on Hitoya's face. The greedy hunter exults in the promise of endless wealth, power, and the thrill of the hunt. Laughing maniacally, Ronsolo Lopez declares that the thrill of hunting monsters never gets old. A sudden, brilliant flash of blue energy erupts as Hitoya channels his immense power. Ronsolo Lopez's smug laughter instantly cuts short as a powerful shockwave catches him completely off guard. Hitoya clenches his fist as he remembers the Grand Dragon's final wish to save its comrades. Hitoya recalls his bird companion's advice that destroying these magic tools is the only way to truly save the slaughtered monsters. Eyes glowing with divine blue fire, Hitoya fiercely vows to destroy the horrific spear once and for all. Hitoya launches himself downward, bringing down a massive glowing blue fist directly onto the opponent's weapon. Ronsolo Lopez struggles to withstand the immense pressure, shocked that Hitoya is utilizing such force without even active skills. The hunter gasps in sheer disbelief as the surface of his precious dragon spear begins to fracture. Delivering a devastating aerial strike, Hitoya unleashes a colossal blast of energy that shatters the spear's defenses. Ronsolo Lopez grits his teeth, sweating profusely as he realizes he's completely outmatched by the boss. Screaming that such power is absolutely impossible, the terrified hunter turns and flees the battle. Hitoya dashes forward in pursuit, commanding the retreating challenger to halt. Hitoya dives rapidly through the forest canopy, pursuing his retreating red-armored opponent down below. Hitoya wonders where his opponent is heading, while the smirking knight celebrates finding his target. Enveloped in purple energy, the knight demands the boss feel honored to serve his purposes. Elaine Tulin stands silently amidst his hovering metal fish, observing the unfolding chaos. Elaine coldly dismisses his ally's struggles, calling his efforts completely useless and dead weight. Hitoya looks on in surprise as the researcher calmly explains that their opponents are now clashing. With a smug grit, the researcher surprisingly offers the dungeon boss an alliance. Ronsolo yells out in recognition of his true target as Hitoya is caught off guard. Brandishing his massive weapon, the hunter loudly vows to defeat the boss to prove his power. The sleek silver fish-like projectiles glide swiftly through the air, ready for action. Hitoya grits his teeth as the painful memory of the majestic Grand Dragon flashes back. Crazed with bloodlust, the knight screams that his spear will happily taste the boss's blood next. Hitoya launches himself forward in a blazing blue sprint as the researcher spectates from behind. Driven by fierce resolve, Hitoya firmly declares that he will never allow the dragon's power to be exploited. Hitoya dives from above to strike as the gloating knight dares him to attack. A blinding shockwave erupts as blue spiritual energy crashes violently against the heavy weapon. The legendary weapon fractures under pressure, sending sharp fragments scattering into the air. Hitoya descends gracefully through the sky as glowing crystal fragments rain down around him. Hitoya catches a single glowing shard of the shattered spear in his open hand. Standing in the quiet forest, Elaine observes the aftermath with a calculating expression. A tense, heavy silence settles over the misty trees, broken only by ragged breathing. Staring at his empty grasp, the trembling knight refuses to believe his weapon is broken. On his knees, the defeated hunter panics, realizing his legendary spear was destroyed by an E-rank monster. Gritting his teeth in frustration, the knight refuses to accept his defeat just yet. Desperate, the knight swings his arms to launch a barrage of spinning red energy rings. The red rings expand in the air as the hunter maniacally orders the boss to bow. Hitoya recognizes the incoming weapons, instantly identifying them as the dreaded rings of subjugation. Laughing crazily, the hunter vows to tear the boss apart and process him into weapon materials. Hitoya prepares his defense, his eyes flashing with a cold, unrelenting focus. With a powerful spin, Hitoya easily shatters the incoming red collars with his massive tail. Cursed glowing red collars burst into useless fragments under the boss's overwhelming physical strength. The knight lies completely paralyzed with shock as the shattered collar pieces rain down. The trembling hunter stares in absolute horror, whispering that shattering the collars is entirely impossible. Hitoya delivers a decisive, devastating blow that completely overwhelms the helpless human hunter. The impact sends the armored knight plunging rapidly through the air toward the forest floor. A massive cloud of dust rises as the defeated knight finally crashes heavily onto the ground. The armored hunter lies completely unconscious and defeated on the quiet forest floor. Elaine Tulin floats silently above the dense forest, calmly observing the battle's conclusion. The researcher now has his eyes carefully analyzing the unique abilities demonstrated by the dungeon boss. A disembodied voice comments in disbelief that the boss actually shattered the subjugation rings. Hitoya stands defensively over the battlefield, keeping a watchful eye on his unconscious foe. An unseen speaker marvels at the boss's incredible and historically unprecedented power. Elaine smiles with deep fascination, marveling at the boss's unique ability to shatter the subjugation rings. As Elaine floats down, the wary dungeon boss demands to know what his true objective is. Hitoya reflects on how the researcher saved them, but remains wary of his cruel tools. Hitoya questions the researcher, asking if his actual mission was simply to clear the entire dungeon. With a calm smirk, Elaine slowly removes his sunglasses to look directly at the boss. Elaine admits his true commission was not just clearing the dungeon, but specifically capturing the boss. Hitoya freezes in absolute disbelief as the terrifying truth of the researcher's mission is revealed. Placing a hand over his chest, the researcher prepares to reveal his sinister research theme. A sudden, sharp swoo sounds as the gray-haired man pulls back his collar. Elaine Tulin grins widely, revealing a glowing red collar of subjugation embedded around his neck. He explains that his ultimate goal is to break free from his own shackles. Hitoya gapes in absolute shock, completely stunned by the unexpected revelation before him. A chilling glow emanates from the jagged red collar bound tightly around his neck. Hitoya stares in utter disbelief, slowly realizing the researcher is wearing a ring of subjugation. Hitoya's eye widens in pure shock as the weight of the discovery sinks in. Elaine Tulin explains his hybrid origin, revealing his father is human while his mother is a monster. Floating nearby, Elaine admits his original mission was to clear the dungeon and capture Hitoya. Touching the collar, Elaine confesses his desire to find a way to free himself. He acknowledges Hitoya as a rare being with the power to destroy the subjugation rings. Elaine offers to smooth things over on the outside, leaving Hitoya deeply confused. He promises to have the total clear request for the dungeon completely voided. Elaine promises not to harm any monsters if he is allowed to study the dungeon. Hitoya contemplates the researcher's words, realizing his unique ability makes him a target. Elaine secretly schemes to gain Hitoya's trust to use him as material for a magic tool. Swooping down angrily, Ata fiercely declares her complete lack of trust in the researcher. Ada warns Hitoya that Elaine previously attacked their ally Yada and remains an enemy. Elaine calmly offers an apology to the hostile bird for his past aggressive actions. He expresses his hope that they can avoid fighting the next time they meet. Elaine secretly rejoices, believing he has finally found a way to break his collar. He maliciously plans to wait for an opening to finish the monster off next time. Ata protests, letting him leave, while Hitoya stands in silent contemplation. Hitoya silently hopes they can find a way to avoid Kafut. Hitoya struggles with the decision of whether to let the researcher walk away. Hitoya's gaze sharpens with determination as a sudden thought crosses his mind. He recalls Elaine's explanation of being a hybrid born of both human and monster. Elaine looks back with a solemn expression, waiting for Hitoya's final response. A haunting flashback reveals artificial hybrids being cultivated inside glowing lavatory tubes. Hitoya feels a surge of sympathy, realizing how differently hybrids are treated outside. Elaine walks away into the dark, reflecting on his alienation from humanity. Hitoya calls out to Elaine, commanding him to wait. Hitoya reaches behind his back, preparing to do something drastic. A sharp crack echoes as Hitoya shocks both Elaine and Ata with his sudden action. Hitoya painfully snaps off a piece of his own tail to use as a material. Hitoya notes that a magic tool will retain the original monster's power. Hitoya grimaces in agony, determined to create a tool capable of destroying the rings. Enduring the immense pain, he prepares to hand over the piece of his tail. Hitoya falls to his knees, catching Elaine completely off guard. Smiling weakly through the pain, Hitoya offers the glowing shard to the researcher. Elaine stares in complete shock, realizing the dungeon boss is offering his own tail. Hitoya explains his action, noting everyone deserves to be free of the rings. He declares that he simply cannot ignore the suffering of others. Hitoya drops the glowing shard directly into Elaine's trembling hand. Elaine stares blankly at the precious gift, his mind racing with disbelief. Looking at the shard, Elaine's expression softens as he feels a rare warmth. Hitoya smiles gently, relieved to have helped someone in need. Ata stares in utter bewilderment at Hitoya's incredibly soft-hearted gesture. Madrona huffs, repeating her distrust of Elaine while Hitoya gently brushes it off. Hitoya chuckles softly, teasing at her overprotective nature. Elaine Tulin displays a floating bubble of water containing metallic fish to Hitoya. Elaine Tulin looks down, expressing his gratitude for the existence of someone like Hitoya. Elaine Tulin walks forward, offering to share an interesting secret about why their dungeon is called Bizarre. Elaine Tulin explains the extreme rarity of dungeon rank-ups, noting all previous 7 instances were destroyed. Elaine Tulin draws a comparison between the ranks of dungeons and the levels of challengers. Elaine Tulin reveals his level 89 status, explaining how dungeon entry requirements are strictly level-based. Hitoya and Ata listen as Elaine Tulin explains how low-level challengers are locked out of clears. A system notification declares that challengers who do not meet level requirements cannot clear dungeons. Elaine Tulin reveals that the highest SSS-ranked dungeons require challengers to be level 999. Elaine Tulin grins as he notes that no challenger has ever been able to attempt SSS-ranked dungeons. Hitoya and his bird companion Ata react with sudden shock to the researcher's explanation. Elaine Tulin explains what would happen if their rising dungeon climbs through all the ranks. Reaching SSS rank would transform their home into an absolutely impossible-to-clear dungeon. Elaine Tulin explains that a higher rank attracts far more powerful and higher-level challengers. A sudden, brilliant golden light erupts above them, cutting off Elaine Tulin's explanation. A glowing system interface announces that the dungeon rank-up system is initializing a reload. Hitoya and Ata shield their eyes as the intense golden radiance grows stronger. A massive pillar of divine gold light engulfs the forest clearing, stunning the group. Elaine Tulin stares upward in deep fascination, witnessing the manifest dungeon rank-up system firsthand. Elaine Tulin's eye suddenly widens in absolute shock as he notices something unexpected. Hitoya looks up in confusion, asking about the strange phenomenon appearing in the light. Hitoya gapes in pure disbelief as the glowing object begins to take clear shape. A massive, ornate golden double door floats suspended in the sky amidst the brilliant light. The mysterious floating structure reveals itself to be a colossal, glowing golden door. Hitoya realizes with sheer astonishment that the door is manifested high up in the ceiling. A system message confirms that the gate to the unexplored dungeon sector is currently locked. The locked golden gate remains suspended high above as the group warily observes it. Elaine Tulin explains that a legendary treasure must lie locked away past that sealed door. Hitoya repeats the word in surprise, intrigued by the mention of hidden treasure. Hitoya and Ayada listen intently as Elaine Tulin begins to detail the secrets of dungeon treasure. Elaine Tulin explains that higher-ranked dungeons are incredibly difficult because of the vast amount of treasure. Hitoya questions the connection between the quantity of treasures and the dungeon's overall difficulty. Elaine Tulin defines a total clear as the successful collection of every single piece of treasure. Hitoya realizes that more stored treasures actually protect their home from collapsing, working in their favor. The group watches in silence as another system notification begins to materialize before them. The system reveals that the gate lock release condition requires the dungeon to reach A rank. Hitoya is stunned by the revelation of what is required to open the gate. Hitoya exclaims in utter disbelief at the overwhelming requirement of reaching A rank. Reaching A rank means their current low-tier dungeon must undergo an incredibly long series of rank-ups. Elaine Tulin explains that rank-ups are triggered by failed challenger clear attempts, prompting Hitoya's question. Elaine Tulin recites precise historical records of failed challenger counts required for other dungeons to reach A rank. Elaine Tulin smiles calmly as he delivers the final estimated number of 10,000 failed challengers. Hitoya screams in absolute horror and shock upon hearing the massive number of 10,000. Stressed, Otto wonders aloud how many years it would take to fight 10,000 challengers. Elaine Tulin solemnly validates their shock, agreeing that reaching A rank is indeed an almost impossible journey. Elaine Tulin reflects on how the entire system of this world is overwhelmingly tilted in humanity's favor. Elaine Tulin somberly declares that this harsh, unfair reality is the true nature of their world. Hitoya solemnly recalls that he has only faced a tiny handful of challengers so far. Gazing at the silhouettes of humanity, Hitoyo feels overwhelmed by the sheer scale of 10,000. Driven by his gentle nature, Hitoyo firmly resolves that he does not want anyone to die. Hitoyo looks on with deep resolve, determined to never lose anyone close to him again. Surrounded by his loyal monsters, Hitoyo happily declares that everyone in the dungeon is alive and he has a way to protect them. A glowing rift manifests as Hitoyo realizes there is still something he can do right now. Staring forward with pure determination, Hitoyo declares that he does not have to give in to despair. Hitoyo stands in his glowing black suit preparing his magic as Ada watches nearby. Ta stands quietly by Hitoyo's glowing legs while the researcher observes them from behind. Alan resolves not to let himself be ruled by anger or cling to despair, admiring Hitoyo's progress. A system notification reveals a secret backdoor method to meeting the difficult A-rank dungeon requirement. Elaine smiles, explaining that while it is a tough hurdle, it is definitely a much shorter route. A school of metallic fish swims upward as they prepare to take their first crucial step. Hitoyo places a hand over his glowing heart, smiling with newfound confidence and hope. The scene shifts abruptly to show that 7 days have passed since their conversation. A furious voice screams that the initial request was false and the target dungeon is completely abnormal. The scarred mercenary Ronsolo Lopez angrily slams his fist, complaining that he has been branded a disgraced dungeon clear. Lord Pedro Detless calmly raises his hands, gently urging the furious mercenary to calm down. Ronsolo refuses to calm down, loudly demanding extra compensation and the immediate restoration of his honor. Ronsolo blackmails the Lord by threatening to expose his embezzlement of the Dragon Raider's wealth, forcing him to comply. A soft splash sounds as Pedro Detless pours a drink, asking to hear Ronsolo's demands for his reputation's sake. Pedro Detless offers the drink with a polite smile, and Ronsolo begrudgingly accepts it with a thank you. A sharp clink echoes as Ronsolo plans to buy better magic tools with his new extra pay. Ronsolo tilts his head back, taking a quiet and satisfying sip of his poured drink. Ronsolo silently resolves to completely bring down the dungeon and destroy everything inside it. Ronsolo grins maliciously, fully confident in his plans of total destruction for the dungeon. The glass slips from Ronsolo's hand, falling down into the dark abyss in slow motion. Ronsolo's eyes widen in pure horror as dark purple veins suddenly spread across his face. Gasping for air, Ronsolo collapses to the floor as Pedro Detless looks down with a terrifying smile, declaring that the mercenary won't have to live with shame anymore. Coughing blood, Ronsolo curses the treacherous lord with his final breath. A heavy splatter of blood covers the page as Ronsolo's final thoughts fade away completely. Ronsolo lies dead on the floor, surrounded by a pooling mess of dark red blood. Pedro Detless sighs casually, complaining that the new poison made an absolute mess of his carpet. Pedro Detless freezes in sudden terror as an unexpected voice from behind asserts that they saw everything. Elaine Tulin steps out from the shadows with a cheerful smile, suggesting that they have a little talk.